Hey, what's up, guys? Jake here with Success Motors, just coming at you with a short video on what to look for when you are buying a used, well, they're all used, Ford Excursion. All right, this is not an exhausted list, and I'm not necessarily the expert in the field. However, I have bought and sold 10 Ford Excursions, all diesels, and I've probably looked at and inquired about, man, I don't know, a couple of dozen. So there's probably a couple dozen I haven't bought. And again, this is Jake. I am Jake with Success Motors. I'm the owner operator, and we sell a lot of niche type of vehicles. You can check out our YouTube channel for the other videos, but that's not what this video is. So my experience and expertise here exists maybe the past 6 months where I've gotten really into these excursions, and there's a lot of fun. So there's a variety of reasons that I like to buy them and sell them and drive them and tinker with them. They're really cool. But what I have learned in the past 6 months, and again, probably a couple of dozen excursion either purchases, sales, or just inquiring about and going to look at them. And so if you're going out and you're looking for an excursion right now, what are some of the things that you should look for? What are some of the things that I look for when buying? And the first and foremost, and this probably is applicable to any vehicle that you buy, but Ford Excursions for sure, is the history. You got to know about the history, you guys. These things, I'm sitting in one right now. It's a 2003. I just listed it for sale this week. So it's 20 years old, right? It's 2003. It's 20 years old. What is the history? What has happened to this truck in the past 20 years? And the first thing that I do, and I would recommend that you do, is I run a Carfax report. And the Carfax report is kind of a challenge because some things that really shouldn't have to stick with a vehicle for life, they end up on Carfax. An example of that is I was looking at an excursion just yesterday that was declared a total loss in 2022, but it was in a very minor fender bender, but the insurance didn't recognize the value of it and they totaled it. So that's got a blemish on its record forever. However, that's kind of an exception. The vast majority of the time, I have found Carfax to be an extremely helpful tool. And so I would look back at its history, at everything that you can, and see where it was purchased, see what states it's lived in. Does it have a history of being up north? If it does, it's probably got some rust. This vehicle is old enough now where if it spent a few years up north, even at the beginning of its life, it very well could have rust. So that's something that you should check for if you recognize that it came from up north. You can see, was it maintained at the dealership? Was it maintained at all? Is there a history of it being maintained? Now that these vehicles are 20 years old, I don't know what the cutoff is, but they're exempt. So whenever we sell an excursion, I'm able to write exempt on the title, which I'm an honest person, so I try to keep the mileage straight. And even if you guys remember seeing a video a few weeks ago, I posted an excursion that was beautiful. It very well could have had 150,000 miles on it, but I happen to know that the odometer had been rolled back, so I sold it as if it had what the number should have been, which is about 300,000, just under. But because I'm able to write exempt on the title because of its age, it'd be very easy to get away with an odometer rollback. So getting the Carfax report enables you to see what the history has been, to track the mileage, and it'll show you if there's an inconsistency. And I'm not saying that there's an inconsistency you shouldn't buy it. In fact, these things last a million miles, or at least some of them are known to do that. But it'd just be good to know what you're buying. Otherwise, I would also look at, how many owners does it have? The least amount of owners, the better, right? Because if you've got one or two, you've got a higher probability of the individuals taking really good care of it. So that's just always good to note. And then I personally really like to buy these excursions like this one. The previous owner had owned it for 12 years. It was a two-owner. So the first guy had owned it for almost 8 years. Then this guy owned it for 12. So I just really like buying it from people like that. So the history, look at the Carfax, and then look at the owner themselves. If you're buying from a dealer, then go ahead and, really, I don't want to say judge, but judge the situation. Judge the person you're buying it from. Do they seem like a stand-up guy or gal? Is it an honest dealer? The dealer that I purchased an excursion from that found out had an odometer rollback, they were Sketchville, if I'm just honest. And if the vehicle hadn't been so nice, I wouldn't have bought it. And I knew about the odometer rollback because of the Carfax before I bought it, and I still did. But I confronted them about it because I was trying to avoid any kind of type of legal issue, and they basically denied doing it. But I've got the Carfax and the documentation to show that more than likely the dealer that I purchased that vehicle from, they had rolled the odometer back. So anyway, know the history, know who you're buying it from, where the vehicle has been, does it have any rust, stuff like that. That's super important. Second thing that I would look for if you're looking at a Ford Excursion, or again, any vehicle, but Excursion specifically, and these diesels specifically, is do they have any oil leaks? That's the second thing I look for. I get down and I look underneath. Where has it been parked? Where has it been sitting? Has it been sitting there for a couple of hours? Did you just move it because you knew I was coming to look at it? Does it have a slow leak? Does it have any leak? Does it have any oil down by the transmission pan? If you open the hood and you look down there in the valley, is there any oil? Anything like that? And the reason I say that is because oil leaks can be quite costly. In fact, a rear main, which is a pretty common issue, can cost quite a bit of money to fix. So some oil leaks aren't that big of a deal. They just are an annoyance, but some of them can be very costly. We had a 7.3 that had an oil leak in the valley, and it turned out to be the turbo pedestal. I think it was about $1,500 to fix, which honestly I thought I dodged a bullet. Just spending $1,500. So keep that in mind. Oil leaks can be quite costly, and they can be a big deal. So if you're buying one that has an oil leak, maybe have a mechanic look at it, and just really make note of the fact that it could cost a couple $1,000s to fix. And at the very least, it's just going to stay in your driveway sitting there. So the history and then oil leaks are the first two things I look at. Third thing that I look at is the transmission. So I want to get in it. I want to drive it. I want to make sure that the transmission shifts good. The reason this is so high on my list is because an Excursion transmission is $3,000 or $4,000, which, not a huge deal if you got a nice truck, but it's good to know that if you pick one up and it's got a bad tranny, you're about $3,000 or $4,000 in that thing, depending on where you go to get it fixed. And I've been burned one time, not in an Excursion, but I was burned in a Cadillac Escalade. I picked up an Escalade, and rookie mistake. I didn't test drive it, and I got it from an auction, just a total rook mistake. And I got it here and to the dealership, and man, I had it professionally detailed and bought new tires for it before I ever even drove the thing. And then I hopped in it, and the thing wouldn't even move forward. It had a bad transmission. So I always look at transmissions. I think it's a good idea, again, because transmission replacement, it's not the end of the world by any means, but it's just relatively costly. Fourth thing to look at, I already kind of mentioned it, rust. Does it have any rust? So these motors will last 1,000,000 miles plus, right? The one I've seen, the highest mileage one that I sold had 350,000 miles on it, which is nothing for these things. It still ran like new. But the body won't necessarily last that long, especially if it lived up north and it's rusty. So what good is the motor if the body's falling apart? So check the rockers. The rocker, if you're unfamiliar, would be like in the door jamb. Open the door. Does it have any rust in the rockers? I have actually found rust, not on any of the vehicles that I've purchased and sold, because I don't buy them with rust, is if you open the barn doors in the back, there can be rust right there underneath the barn doors that you wouldn't necessarily look to see. And then definitely get up underneath it. Does it have any surface rust on the frame and whatnot? Now, my opinion is the surface rust is not that big of a deal, because even modern cars, they're going to have a lot of rust. Like I'm looking at an older Ford F-150 right in front of me right now, and it's got a little bit of surface rust on the pumpkin in the back. I don't think that's a deal breaker by any means, but just be conscious. If it's surface rust, that's okay. If it's like rust and things are falling apart and bolts don't look like they would come off without breaking, and it lived up north, or even down south, if you get close enough to the border, if things were in Houston or maybe in Galveston, they could be pretty rusty. So check out and make sure it doesn't have any rust. So history, oil leaks, transmission, and rust. And then the fifth thing that I would look for is electrical. So when I hop in a truck, I want to make sure, I should have said something. Well, I'll add a number 6 here. So the fifth thing is electrical. Door locks, do they work? Windows, do they work? Those aren't super expensive to fix. They're just kind of annoying. Now, for instance, this truck right here, the door lock actuators are out, and it's just kind of annoying. So I just like to know about it before I buy it. Do the vents work in the back? Not the AC vents, but there's 2 switches right here on the center console thing that open up the back windows. And do those still open and close? Electrically, is everything working? Does it start up? Does it have any lights on? Is the transmission light on? Anything like that? So just electrical. And then I would loop into that. I also am checking the air conditioner, because the air conditioner can be so expensive. And I'm down here in Texas. I am sweating right now because it's 104 degrees, something like that. And without an air conditioner, that's no fun. So make sure the AC works. Again, that can be very expensive depending on what it is. So the air conditioner needs to be blowing, and it needs to be blowing cold. Now, if it's blowing, you can be pretty sure the compressor and everything works. And if it's just, if it's not blowing cold, it's pretty safe to assume that's low on refrigerant. And the only way it would be low on refrigerant is if there's a leak, because it's a closed system. Now, if there's any mechanics that are watching this and they want to correct me on that, feel free. I'm not sure if I feel pretty confident with that. But it's a closed system, and the only way some of that refrigerant is getting out is if there's a leak, right? And leaks can be super expensive to fix. So just make sure that it's blowing. If it's blowing, that's great. If it's not blowing cold, it's very possible you have a leak in there somewhere. Other things are pretty minor. Like I've had a couple of issues where the AC won't blow out of the vents and the dash, or it won't adjust between vents and like the floor, when you adjust it on the dash. And that's just I think they call it the blender door actuator. That's super inexpensive to fix, but you want to make sure it's blowing and blowing cold. Or if it's not, just know that you might have some money to put in the AC. And the final thing, kind of a bonus, I didn't mean to have so many. I also look for water leaks. And this is kind of a newer thing that I started looking for, because I didn't think that these things would have water leaks, because there's no clearance lights, there's no sunroofs. So where would the water be coming from? But pay attention. Do these things have any water leaks? I've got in them before, and the carpet was wet and water was getting in from somewhere. So just pay attention for any signs or symptoms, I guess you would, of any water leaks. So there you go, guys. Right here, I'm not an expert by any means. There's people that are more knowledgeable than I am. I'm a babe in the woods with this, but I've probably looked at maybe a cumulative 3 or 4 dozen excursions and bought and sold 10 of them. And the first thing that I would recommend looking for is the history. Does it have any oil leaks? How does the transmission? Does it have any rust, electrical, AC, and then any water leaks? And then outside of that, you guys, if it kind of marks all those things, the body is good and the history was good, there's no accidents, everything is clean, there's a good shot that it's a good truck and it's a good rig. So anyway, hopefully you guys, this is helpful. Again, my name is Jake. I'm with Success Motors. You can check us out on Instagram, on Facebook. Check out the YouTube channel. We've got 2 excursions listed right now for sale, including the one I'm sitting in, which is a really nice truck. And then hopefully that gives you some confidence on what I'm looking for. So I'm not buying anything that I do not feel comfortable with to resell. So I'm trying to build a brand and a reputation here in Success Motors. I don't want to sell something that I wouldn't want to drive myself. So there's been plenty of times where I've driven 3 hours to go look at an excursion only to find out that it had an oil leak, or it had a water leak, or something I didn't feel comfortable with, or the owner themselves just seemed sketchy and I left it, because I don't want to get something that I then need to sell to one of you all, and you get it there and you go, Jake, man, what the heck? That's not what I want to do. So hopefully that gives you some confidence in buying excursions for me. But if you're out there on your own and you're looking for one, run through that checklist, and that ought to be a great start. You can check out our website, successmotors.net. I think there's about 10 excursions that we have bought and sold, as well as pictures on there. Those are all good ones. I would check them out. There's one, the very first one we ever did had 160,000 miles on it. Look at those pictures. That's what you want yours to look at. That was kind of the gold, that was the gold standard. We had a couple of really good ones on there. The last black one I sold, it was an 05, not the really big lifted one, but the one with the odometer discrepancy. That was super clean too. As well as this one. Check out the pictures of this one. Go to our website, and this is what it should look like. This is what it really should look like. It's a good example. So check out these pictures and kind of use that when you're going out there to look at your own. All right, guys, stay tuned for more videos. God bless you all, and have a great day.